Hi everyone, and welcome back to Stitches Past 5. My name is Vera, and on this channel I talk about anything that's going on in my knitting life. And today I'm super excited to do a flip through and review of this book, which is Veronika Lindberg's or Kutovakika's Knits to Wear. So I'll be giving a short introduction to the book and then I'll kind of give a overview of the patterns that are in the book and share my opinion right at the end. Before we get started though, I want to share the sweater that I'm wearing today. I'm wearing the Yuki sweater by Kutovakika in her first book, Knit This. This is my partner's sweater. It is a men's sweater, so it is quite oversized on me. But I had so much fun making this sweater. This was like the first item that I made of her first book, so it kind of has like a special place in my heart. Yeah, I'm just excited to get to share more patterns of her with you, and I thought this sweater was perfect to wear for this occasion. So let's get into it. I bought this book because I own the first book and I absolutely adore it. So I own her first book, which is called Knit This, and I've probably made the most patterns out of that book than any other knitting book I own. I have it as an ebook version, so I have it as the like online PDF version on my iPad, which was available for purchase just on her regular website. But I did know that I wanted her second book once it comes out in hardcover form, and that's exactly what I ordered and what I got. So I paid around 40 euros here for this. I'm based out of Austria, so all of our prices are in euros, but that's roughly around the same in US dollars, which I think is like, it's not a cheap book, it's also not a super expensive book, so I definitely think it's a fair price. But for that price, you're also getting 17 knitting patterns, so if you do the maths, it's still a lot more economical per pattern than it would be to buy all of the 27 patterns independently. You would be spending a lot more money. So maybe a quick note about Veronika Lindberg. So she's here on the cover of the book. Here on YouTube, she's known as Kutovakika. I believe she is a Finnish knitwear designer, knitter, and I guess also a pretty big YouTube knitter. I love her. I love watching all of her videos. She is such a big inspiration, and yeah, I've been following her for a really long time, so I kind of saw the whole process of her making her first book, that coming together, and then I was super excited to hear her announce that she's going to be publishing a second book. In terms of her knitting style, she is more like, I mean, she is a Nordic knitter, and that definitely like comes through in her designs, but she's also a very modern knitter who kind of goes with trends, like sees what's out there, and I really enjoy that because I like trying new things, and I like, you know, a little bit of traditional mixed with a little bit of modern. I really like that. I would also describe her style as quite, yeah, like a lot of her items are quite bulky, oversized, which is usually not my first preference in clothing. Now, when I am making a pattern of hers that is really bulky, oversized in terms of the positive ease that's suggested or the style of the garment, I will usually try to size it down a size or see how I can make it fit more my own personal preferences, and that's usually worked out quite well. And yeah, that's in her first book less of a thing I find than in her second book here. I find that these patterns are a little bit more oversized style, if that makes sense. So I guess her style is also evolving, but I'll get more into that once we look through the patterns. Okay, so like I mentioned, in this book are 17 patterns. So those are comprised of 7 sweaters, 2 cardigans, 3 tops, 1 vest, 3 hats, and 1 collar. And the book is available in English and in Finnish. So I of course have the English version because I do not speak Finnish. It is a hardcover, so that's really nice, I find. And the book has in total, I think it's 207 or 201 pages, a few extra if you count like the empty pages at the back, but a good 200 pages. And yeah, so it is a quite like fairly good sized book, I would say. It is a like large format. The publisher is Lane Publishing. So what I really like about this book is kind of like the visuals, like the vibe of it, if you will. So if you look here, like even the colors are like very carefully chosen, like light pastels and so on and so forth. She includes like full images of just like inspirational photos that, like, if you follow her, you know that like she takes her photos herself. And I think she even went on like a trip to take photos for this book. So I think just knowing her channel and understanding what's behind it makes it that much more special, and also just makes these beautiful full-paged images just so much more powerful, I find. Because yeah, I think as knitting is a very aesthetic hobby, so this book really caters to that, or emphasizes that. Next we come to the contents page, again with a full-size image, and then all the patterns are listed. So the patterns start on page 24, and before that, which I think is really nice, you have a few introductory chapters. Now I should probably say that this book is not really written for a like very basic beginner, but rather this book is written for someone who is probably already knitting, someone who wants to try out different styles, someone who wants to kind of, you know, try out lace, try out cabling, and so on and so forth. So the chapters before the patterns include the preface, then 10 tips to knit like a pro, abbreviations, and special techniques. So even already from reading those like introductory chapter titles, we kind of know that this is not a beginner's book. They're not going to teach you how to knit and how to purl, but they're going to teach you kind of like those special techniques, how to knit like a professional, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a really nice book to kind of elevate your knitting. I do want to really quickly jump on here and talk a little bit more about the tips to knit like a pro. These aren't the normal tips that you would kind of like find by a quick Google, but you can really tell that she's put thought into them. So things like give your knits a day at the spa, or join new yarn more smoothly, soften itchy knit. Those are all the things that she'll be answering in those introductory chapters. Fix a sloppy collar, all those things that you've probably encountered before in your knitting, and she just kind of acknowledges that and writes them all in here. Another thing that I should mention before I start looking at all the different patterns of the book is that I've only finished one pattern of the book, but I'm currently also in the making of another pattern of the book. So while this is a flip through, it's not a full detailed review of the book, because of course I can only do that once I've actually knit most or all of the patterns in here, which I am planning on doing, and I will say that or mention that more at the end. But for now, we're flipping through, we're looking at the patterns, and I'll say like my opinions to the patterns. So once we're through with all the introductory chapters, each and every single pattern gets a introduction spread. So it looks like this, where it's the name of the pattern is listed or is written at the bottom, a quick like introduction to the pattern or a quick sum up of it, a quick like description of the garment's vibe is given here, and then usually there is a full page image on the right hand side, and this is consistent throughout the book. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each and every pattern, and I will kind of split my screen and put the image of the pattern so that you can see it nice and close. The first pattern is called the Urban Romance, and it is a raglan sweater that is knitted from the top down in like this honeycomb stitch with like a few, I guess, cabling lace details to it. It comes in sizes XS to 5XL and is knit at a gauge of 18 stitches and 26 round in like the specific sample pattern. So I really love this pattern because it is a like very intricate stitch that kind of like, it's just very interesting to look at. There's a lot going on in the sweater, but it does seem like the pattern is repeating. So I think the Urban Romance sweater is exactly what the name describes it to be. It is this intricate, like, yeah, pattern sweater that seems like it's gonna take a while to knit. Like this is not like your quick stockinette sweater, but I love it. I am really intrigued by it. I think this will definitely be a good challenge in terms of knitting. I will say that she really goes into detail in the descriptions. There is like big charts throughout the book for you to follow, so it should be like, it kind of like takes you by the hand and you know, walks you through the sweater. I mean, this sweater alone has 3 double spreads of charts that you will be following. Okay, the next sweater is the Simple Things sweater, and this is actually currently on my needles. It's not too exciting right now because I'm just making a square, so I'm not even gonna show. It's not too exciting right now because I'm just making a square, but I am planning on knitting a little bit more on this in the coming days. This is a drop shoulder sweater, and it is like kind of what the title describes it to be. It's just a simple, nice, basic sweater. It is more on the overfit side of things, or oversized side of things, I should say. So when I chose what size to make, I definitely picked it like on the smaller side of the positive ease. The sweater comes in sizes XXS to 5XL, and it has a suggested positive ease of 30 to 40 centimeters, so that to me is a lot. Even in like a big sweater, like 40 centimeters is almost half a meter of positive ease. That's really a lot for me. But the gauge here is 19 stitches and 26 rows in stockinette stitch, and it is knit on 3mm and 4.5mm needles. Yeah, I kind of, when I first got this book, I knew immediately that I wanted to make the sweater. I think it just looks very sleek, very elegant. I purchased like a bit of a darker color than what's here in the pattern, like a bit of a darker beige, just because that kind of is more my color, I guess. But yeah, so far so good. So far pattern is making perfect sense. I haven't done that much. I have maybe like 15 centimeters of just like a rectangle. And yeah, I'm excited to see what my one will look like, and hopefully it looks like hers, because I really like just the crispness of the twisted rib at the bottom, for example, the crispness of the thick sleeves. And yeah, I do like the oversized here, so maybe this is the sweater that will open my doors to the oversized look and feel. The next pattern is a men's pattern, and it is called Keep It Together. I mean, I say it's a men's pattern, but really I think this would work for women just as well. It is essentially a ribbed beanie, a very basic ribbed beanie with a double folded brim at the bottom. It is a one size on a gauge of 25 stitches in like the 2x2 ribbing after blocking, and yeah, it's knit on 3mm needles. I think this is just such a staple, and I think it's one that like I will kind of try to make if I ever want to make a basic ribbed beanie. Yeah, I think where can you go wrong, right? I do like that she includes like men's patterns. I mean, the sweater I'm wearing is also a men's pattern from her first book that I actually made for my partner. I think it can be nice, and it can maybe be just redundant if you don't knit for men or males in your life, but for me I really like it because it's definitely harder to find knitting patterns for men because there's just a lot fewer of them than it is for women. Next pattern in this book is called My Favorite Story, and it is this intricate cable knit sweater in an oversized look. Especially the sleeves here are very oversized. It is a top-down raglan sweater, but the raglan also features this cable twisted look, so I think that's so cool. I've never actually seen that before in a sweater where the raglan itself is like a showstopper kind of. The sweater comes in sizes XS to 4XL and is knit at a gauge of 20 stitches and 26 rounds in this specific stitch pattern, on 3.5 and 5mm needles. So I really like this sweater. I think similar to the first sweater, similar to the Urban Romance sweater, this one is just, there's a lot going on. The cables are really intricate. Yeah, she also made a version, and I guess her partner is wearing it in the images that are given here. So it's just like, it kind of opens your eyes, like this does not need to be just a women's sweater, it can also be a men's sweater, which I think is really nice in here. I am intrigued by this sweater. I would love to make it. I think it's another one that will take quite some time. I know I'll make it at some point, but I'm not sure I'm ready just yet because it just seems like a very big project. The only thing, and this is also something that she describes as something that can be adjusted, is that the sleeves of the sweater, personally for me, they're too big, they're too bulky. They seem like they're like, I don't know, 15 centimeters longer than where your wrist would normally end. And personally, that's just a little bit too much. I would definitely be shortening and maybe also shrinking the circumference of the sleeve, because I just don't like sleeves hanging around the bottom of my sweater. The next sweater is kind of a direct ode to a sweater in her first book, and this one is called Playful Palette, and it really reminds me of the caramel sweater, which is part of her first book, which I keep saying I'm gonna make because I just really like the way it looks, but I still have not gotten around to it. So I guess now there's another one that can join that list. But this one is called Playful Palette, and it is essentially a colorwork sweater, like a little bit more traditional round yoke colorwork. This one comes in sizes XS through 5XL, and is worked at a gauge of 17 stitches and 26 rows on 3.5 and 4.5 millimeter needles. So I think if you compare the sweater directly to the one in her first book, I actually prefer the one in her first book, mainly because of the color choice that was used in the first book. I think it's just such a cool color combination of that caramel sweater that is in my mind, and that I want to make it, and I'm not going to make it until I find colors that will have that exact effect. And I feel like here with this one, the Playful Palette, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this color combination. This would not be the color combination that works for me. I would need a few more like just pronounced colors that aren't that pale. But I think as a sweater, it's a really pretty sweater. I think it's yeah, personal preference which one of the two, caramel sweater or the Playful Palette, you'll make. I actually even think that the gauge is very similar, so it is a pretty, like, yeah, similar. I think that the color work is different though. Next we have another sweater, and this one is called Take Me Out, and this one is kind of like a stockinette sweater with some lace details. It is a very like boxy type sweater, and yeah, I think you can really see that in this book her color choices have kind of, her color preferences have definitely evolved. I think here Veronika Lindberg is gravitating more towards like the pastels, the neutral colors, whereas in her first book there was often like a bigger pop of color, I find. But anyways, this sweater comes in sizes XXS to 5XL, and it is knit at a gauge of 17 stitches and 24 rows in stockinette. And then of course you add the lace detail, which by the way is all charted as well, although it is like a little bit more sparse. It's definitely not like a full lace sweater. Yeah. Here, I think the thing that makes this sweater so cool is the twisted rib at the sleeves and at the bottom of the sweater, so at the hem. And I think that to me is the nicer detail than the lace in the sweater. I could definitely see myself just making like a stockinette sweater with that twisted with the twisting cables at the bottom and the sleeves, because while I like the lace, I think it's, I don't know, it's just not really my personal preference. So I will be making the sweater because of the twisted ribbing, but I'm not sure yet if I'll even include the lace. I don't know. I think it'll be like a snap decision once I make it. Next we have a cardigan, and this one is called Limoncello. So I guess it gets its name from the drink, and it is another cable cardigan, or I shouldn't say another, this is the first cable cardigan, but another cabling piece. This is a cardigan, and yeah, it has like the V opening, and to me this cardigan just screams spring, it screams Italy, like in the spring. I guess the name helps. But this cardigan can be knitted in sizes XS to 5XL at a gauge of 16 stitches and 24 rows in stockinette stitch. I like this cardigan. I do like it. I think it kind of goes with the theme of the cabling and lace in this book. And yeah, I think I will try to make it. But personally, I'm not usually the biggest fan of a V-neck opening cardigan. I don't know, maybe this will make me like it more. I made a cardigan from her first book that has like a very high round neck, and then I like that if I close it I'm basically wearing a sweater. But why not try this one and maybe make it for the spring or even the cold summer evenings. Next we have another sweater, and this one is called Coffee Run. So this is a pretty basic stockinette sweater with an interesting raglan though. From what I can see, it is like a twisted rib raglan. Yeah, the description says that it's like a boxy sweater that you can kind of just throw on if you're going on a coffee run. I personally love this pattern. I will be making it, not yet, I have too many other things on my needles at the moment. But if you want to make it, it comes in sizes XS through 5XL. And it is knit at a gauge of 18 stitches and 25 rows in stockinette on 5mm needles. So to me that sounds like a pretty quick project. I think it suggested that you use like an airy yarn, so something that's not too hot, but of course you can also make it in thick wool and you'll just have a nice winter sweater. Next is another cardigan, another kind of oversized cardigan. You can definitely kind of see the trend here of the oversize or the bulky bulky fit. So this is a striped garter stitch cardigan in these like black and white stripes if you're making the colors according to the patterns. It features a drop shoulder and v-neck construction, and yeah, like I said, it is also knit quite large, like in terms of positive ease. I think the positive ease is 20 to 30 centimeters. I guess, yeah, again, quite a lot. For some people that's a lot, for me that's quite a lot. It comes in sizes XS through 5XL, and it is knit at a gauge of 16 stitches and 32 rows in garter stitch. So I think this would also be a pretty quick project. It's knit on 5mm needles. So yeah, I like this cardigan. I never know if I'm the biggest fan of garter stitch, just like how it looks, but I like it. Like, this is a fun one, and I think it could be just a fun like palette cleanser in terms of making a cardigan that can often, you know, be a lot of purling, and we all know that most people prefer knitting over purling, so I guess that solves that problem. But overall, I enjoy the way this looks. I think you can never go with some monochromatic stripes. The next pattern is a beanie, and it's called Chloe. So this is a pretty like normal standard hat. It features a folded brim and a stockinette head part. This beanie comes in one size and is knit at a gauge of 20 stitches in stockinette stitch on 3 and 4mm needles. And I actually have to say that I am a really big fan of this beanie. I think beanies, the simpler the better often. I definitely don't own enough just standard basic beanies. I'll probably be making this one with some scrap yarn if I have some lying around. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it fits, because I think with a beanie it could be the best looking pattern, but then when you put it on it just doesn't fit right. Like, that's really frustrating. So I'm just curious, like, if that's a case of it'll fit really well or not well. The next pattern is a summer top, and this one is called Sundazed. It features a pretty wide ribbing, like a wide ribbed collar, as well as ribbing at the bottom, and it kind of features this like A-shape construction in terms of the shape of the top. It's worked from the bottom up and can be made in sizes XS to 5XL, and comes or is knit at a gauge of 16 stitches and stockinette stitch on 3 and 4mm needles. So I guess that is a very dense fabric, or it will create a very dense fabric, which I think on summer tops is sometimes even a bit nicer, because they can quickly become a little bit see-through, which is less of an issue in winter sweaters, because of course you can always wear like a tank top or a t-shirt underneath. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is my favorite pattern in this book. I think I would definitely, especially at the back, make it a little bit more straight and less like curved in. That's just not really my personally preferred like shape of a tank top. But other than that, I think, yeah, it's a nice pattern. Like, I would probably try to adjust it if I'm making it. I don't know if I'll make it this summer. So that's the Sundazed top. The next pattern is another pattern, and this one is called Sweetheart. It is a lace sweater, and it looks like little love hearts on the sweater, which I think is adorable. We're kind of seeing a few of these type sweaters like around on Ravelry, around on Instagram. So this is definitely more like of a trend that has been followed here. I really like this design though. It comes in sizes XS through 5XL and is knit at a gauge of 16 stitches by 26 rounds, but in the chart that's given in the book. The suggested yarn is that you use a fingering weight yarn together with a lace weight yarn, just for that very like delicate feel. Like I said, this is one of my favorite patterns in this book. I am really excited to start it probably towards the autumn or winter this year. The next pattern is another summer top, and this one is called Send Me a Postcard, which I think is an adorable name for a summer top. And yeah, it is like a high neckline summer top with broad shoulders with a U-shaped back, which I think is interesting. It comes in sizes XS to 5XL, and it is knit in a gauge of 21 stitches and 30 rows on 3 and 4 millimeter needles. Yeah, I think this is like a really flattering top, especially from the front. Personally, I'm not sure about the back, so I think if I were to knit this, I might actually alter the back to make it a little bit more high rise, but I'm not sure. Like, I think I would have to try it on. I think from the front, like even the raglan, there's like a tiny little raglan detail, which I think is so cute. I think it just shows that she's not just trying to make a top, she's trying to make an interesting top, which I think is always such a nice touch. Next is another summer top, and this one is called Fortuna. It's a single strap top, so it's kind of like a one shoulder top, and it features a crochet edge around it. This top again comes in sizes XS through 5XL, and is knit at a gauge of 21 stitches in stockinette stitch on 2.5 and 3.5 millimeter needles. Yeah, I think this is both a trend following pattern as well as kind of a little bit of a throwback. I'm not sure we're seeing too many single strap tops at the moment anymore, but I also kind of have a feeling that they're up and coming. I think, again, personally, I would be a bit worried about the single strap, and I think that's also the reason the crochet collar is there, or the crochet like bordering is there to kind of like hold it a little bit more in place, which I think is a really smart way to solve any like flapping around, which I think would happen if you just knit the top without like securing it with a crochet collar. Overall, I like this top. I'm not sure if it's exactly my style, but that's okay. I still like it, and like if I make it, I can always add a second strap to it, I guess. Okay, so now we've kind of flown into the summer for 2 or 3 patterns, it feels like. We're coming back to winter, or we're coming back to knitting seasons or knitwear seasons. The next pattern is called Fuzz It, and it is this really cool vest. This is also one of my favorite patterns in this book. It is this very dense vest that has an opening at the front, knit in a very fluffy, thick yarn. It comes in sizes XS to 5XL, and it is knit at a gauge of 10 stitches in 10 centimeters, so you can see that that's a very thick gauge on 5 millimeter needles and 6 millimeter needles. So I think this would be a really quick project. I fell in love with this pattern as soon as I saw it. I think it's so interesting, and yeah, I've been wanting to make it. I've just not found the right yarn for it, but once I do, I'll be sure to start this probably for the autumn or for the winter, hopefully this year if I find a nice yarn that I like for it. The next pattern in this book is a collar, and it is called Yours Truly. So it is an accessory knit, and it is a collar in this lace pattern. She does describe it as a one skein project, so I guess it would be a really nice stash buster if you're into collars. This one is one size, it's a one size pattern, and it's knit at a gauge of 19 stitches in 10 centimeters in this like lace pattern that she prescribes. I think I'm not a collar person. I still think it's nice that she includes it in here though. So if you are, it's a nice stash buster pattern. The last pattern of the book is actually the only pattern of the book that I've completed. And this one is called the Twist It hat. So I'll show you my version of it. So I have it right here. This is the Twist It hat, the one I made. So it is essentially this hat that features this cabling at the top, very easy, very simple cabling, and then this thick 1x1 ribbed brim here at the bottom. Now the brim is actually triple folded, so if you unfold the brim, it's super long. This is what the hat looks like with the brim unfolded. And then there are these like lines that you knit into the ribbing that kind of show you where you should fold your brim. In terms of the specs for this pattern, it is a one size pattern and the gauge is 20 stitches by 20 rounds in this cabling pattern. So I actually kind of struggled with that because I never know what yarn to choose when the gauge is in a cabling like gauge swatch. I ended up using this yarn, the Drops Nepal. It was basically leftover yarn that I had from another project, and I just thought, hey, like I have 3-4 more skeins, I'm sure that'll be enough for a hat, so I just kind of use this. This is, by the way, 65% wool and 35 alpaca, and it is a 50-gram skein that runs 75 meters, so it's a pretty thick yarn. The one thing that I would say with this pattern, while I really enjoy this hat, I'll show you how it's worn. I actually really think it's a nice hat shape. I would not want this part to be any like thicker than it is. But like this, I really enjoyed. It's a very warm hat. This wool is not itchy at all. I think the one thing that I would do different in this pattern is I would not incorporate the rounds of just like the folding rounds in the brim, because now I have to fold it where these lines are. And I don't know, I just wish I had a little bit more like flexibility with where I fold the brim, because of course otherwise like you see the lines, which is not the end of the world, but I just wish I didn't do that. I see hats do it sometimes, but now I know that that's not something that I want to be doing in my hat patterns or in the pattern in the hats I make. So that brings us to the end of the book. That is already all the patterns of the book, all the 17 patterns. Now in terms of what I think of this book, so I think I was really excited after her first book to buy this book, and I also thought that this book was gonna be more similar to her first book in terms of pattern styles, in terms of techniques used, and so on and so forth. It's not, it's quite different. You can definitely see that she's evolved as a knitter. She is writing different patterns, she's using, her styles have changed, but I really enjoy that. Like I really love that, because otherwise I would be buying two books that are pretty similar, that are pretty, you know, I mean, that's kind of to be expected because it's from the same designer, but I think you get the point that this is just, it could as well be from a different designer, like it's that different. I really enjoy that though, because it challenges me in my knitting. It kind of shows me things that I can also be doing, and I think that's also the reason that I like buying knitting books, because there's just always like so many ideas, and even if I'm not gonna knit a pattern from this book right away, it serves as inspiration, and I think that's so nice. Who do I think this book is for? I think this book is for people who kind of are looking to maybe get a little bit more advanced in their knitting. There's a lot of cabling in here, there's a lot of lace in here, there's, you know, methods, like even for the basic stockinette sweaters, like she will incorporate something that makes it just like a little bit special, which I think is so nice. I think in terms of the patterns in there, I love all the winter patterns. Like I'm really a big fan of the sweaters. I think they're beautiful, I think they're intricate. In terms of the summer patterns, I'm not sure I bought this book for like the tank top patterns or the summer top patterns. I think it's nice that she includes them in there. Like, I'm not saying I won't make them, but I definitely think that the winter patterns in this book outweigh the summer patterns, if that makes sense. Another thing that I'm not the biggest fan of, I've already said it a little bit, is that the patterns are all, or like the style is very wide, is very, you know, like very bulky, very oversized. That's just not usually my personal preference. Not something you can't change. You can always size down a size. You can always, you know, like do a few stitches here, a few stitches there. But I think my personal style is a little bit less oversized than hers. Not something that I can't like be influenced about. So I'm excited to try some of these garments and see if maybe an oversized fit is for me, and maybe I should be trying like more oversized garments. Another thing is that I find it a little bit difficult trying to find a yarn if the gauge like swatch is not given in stockinette or ribbing. So what this book does a lot is it gives like, I don't know, 16 stitches in 10 centimeters within this like chart A, but then I find it very difficult to choose a yarn that fits that, mainly because I am someone who doesn't usually use the suggested yarns, mainly because I like using different yarns. Like, there's no real reason for it. I just like using what I see online, what I see in shops, and like so sometimes that is then a little bit difficult. Usually what patterns do is they then give you your length that you need. So say, I don't know, 2000 meters or 1000 meters of yarn XYZ. This book, a lot of patterns in this book often use up until like 3 yarns held together, which just makes it really hard to substitute yarn. Or at least I found it a little bit hard to substitute yarn. Like, she'll often use like 2 fingering weight yarns and like a lace weight yarn all held together. And then I'm here sitting like, okay, what on earth am I gonna use for yarn? So I guess that's a very detailed thing that I've been struggling with a little bit. What I have done is I've kind of flipped through this book and like tried to see what patterns I want to make and if I have yarn on hand, but I kind of got stuck on the yarn part just because it can get a little bit complicated with this book. Another thing this book does is that most of the patterns in here use a mohair yarn held together with a normal yarn, and I think that's definitely like a trend now. I think that's what a lot of knitwear designers are making, just because it gives like a very nice halo effect. It's not something I personally love doing, A, because it's super expensive, and B, because I feel like whenever I wear mohair, I just eat half the sweater. Like, the fuzz is everywhere. Like, if you've worn a mohair item before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have one blue mohair sweater, and the blue fuzz, like, I'll find it like 3 days after I've worn the sweater in random places. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my points of, I don't want to call it critique, but the things I like a little bit less about this book. But that's not to say that I don't like this book. I'm really, really intrigued by it. I'm so excited by it. I'm super inspired by it, which I think is always such a nice thing if a book can like inspire you to that extent. And yeah, I'm just super excited to make a lot more patterns of it. So yeah, the first one I think went quite well, and the next ones are to follow. So yeah, that is my quick or first preliminary review slash flip through of this book. I'll definitely be making another video once I've made I mean, let's be honest, I'm not gonna make all of the patterns. I think that's not that likely, but I'll definitely make as many as I want to, and that's probably quite a few of this book, and then I'll kind of give more detailed reviews about each pattern, which I obviously can't do at the moment. But I hope you enjoyed this flip through. Let me know if you have this book, if you like this book, if you have her other book, if you're planning on buying this book. I know that my other like book review I guess was quite popular, and then a lot of people asked about this one, so that's why I wanted to make this video now and not wait until I've made like all the patterns in it. So I hope this was helpful to you in making you decide whether to purchase this book or not. Or maybe you already own it and you just kind of wanted to, you know, see what other people think about it. But I'll leave it here for today. Thank you for watching. Be sure to give this video a like if you liked it, leave a comment down below, and maybe even subscribe and stick around. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, take care. Bye.